good system as opposed to trying to use weird cable. Okay, natural origins of scales. Take all this with a grain of salt because it's, like I said, it's from these older books, and a lot of it relies on thinking about what humans find to be pleasing, right? So this is based on somebody's description of what find to be pleasing. Again, these are Western music conventions. Other systems may have different conventions. They may find other things smooth, regular, pleasant, or harmonious. Lots of answers. They can all be right. So, according to Jeans and Olson, the scales are supposed to be smooth, regular, pleasing, harmonious. Things that sound good together. We talked a little bit about things that sound bad, the tritone, things that half step apart. So an interesting thing to look at is, well, what have you got, as a sound source? You can look at vibrating string or air in a pipe, and if you look at that, you don't get a pure sinusoid out of that. You actually get the fundamental and then harmonics and overtones. So what are the harmonics you get out of a vibrating string? Let's look at those and see. This is called the harmonic series. And are those useful to create scales from? And you see that the ratios are given here. And I think we're going to take a little aside here because I'm talking about vibrating strings. So I brought in some vibrating strings. Well, they're not vibrating yet. All right, so here is a bass guitar. And you can play a simple note. Okay? So this is ostensibly a G, or that's an A at 55 hertz. So that would be 110 hertz. Now, you may think of a string as the plot on the left, which is just fixed at the endpoints, vibrating in the middle. Reality, it's actually the endpoints vibrating in the middle, the endpoints and an extra note in the middle vibrating around that, and then all the others. So it's actually sum of all these harmonics. It's vibrating in all these complex modes at once. And you can't really see that, but you can do other experiments to prove it. So if we were to lay all these nodes together, you'll see that there are certain parts where things overlap. So the dark blue there is the fundamental. Right? So there's our fundamental. Now if we look at the green, which is the second harmonic, we see it has a node in the middle, which corresponds to the antinode, the point of maximum excursion on the fundamental. So if we can stop the fundamental, we can hear the harmonic. And we'll actually hear all the harmonics that have a node at that point, and we'll kill all the harmonics that don't have a node at that point. So, fundamental, harmonic. Okay, so that's 55 hertz plus 110 plus 220, etc. That's just 110 and above. Then we can also do it at the divide the scale length by 3 and we'll get the third harmonic node. Okay, so that's, this is the entire scale length, half the scale length, third of the scale length, fourth of the scale length, and then after that it gets a little harder because they're not over the frets that are hard for me to find. You can get other. The other ones. My finger, unfortunately, is not a great view. But so I'm doing is I'm trying to isolate the upper harmonics. And this is a common technique. In playing music, a lot of people put harmonics into their playing. And then there's also pinch harmonics, which we can get to, which are used on guitar with lots of distortion. Okay. The other thing to note is the combination of the different sinusoids you see are based on two things. One, where the string is plucked, and two, where the sound is picked up So for instance, there are two separate pickups here, and we'll get to this next week. If you use the neck pickup, you get more of a bassier sound than if you use bridge pickup. You can't hear it too well, does it? That's the bridge. It's more bassy and rounder. And the point is that you get, if you're all the way at the edge near the end of the string, you get less vibration from the fundamental, but more vibration from the other notes. So you get more of a treble response. A lot more treble there than that. Okay? And the other thing is, like I said, where you pluck it. So if we pluck right in the middle, you get a different sound than if you pluck at the end. And of course, using a pick is different, and hammering, will give you different sound than if you pluck. So, touch on that a little bit more next week. Okay, so based on this, where do we go from here? We know that the string has harmonics, but what are they? This table shows them. This is starting with C, which isn't a string on the bass, but is useful nonetheless. And we'll start with 66 hertz. And so the fundamental is the first, is a root note, it's the entire length of the string. If we then divide the string in half and play that, well, that's an octave, right? Well, I guess you don't know that, but it's an octave, right? So an octave is double the frequency of the fundamental. Then if we look at the next ratio, if we take the string and divide it into 3, and we look at the wavelength of that, that's 3 times the fundamental, and that works out to be a G. Okay, so 3/2 is a G, which is a fifth in the key of C. If we divide it into 4, any power of 2 is another octave, basically, right? So if you multiply your frequency by 2, you get an octave. You multiply by any other power of 2, you get another octave. So that's C. Okay. Then you divide it into 5, you get frequency that comes out to be E, and that ratio is 5/3. So now, okay, look at that. We've got the first 5 things that came out of that vibrating string. 2 of them are octaves of the fundamental, same pitch, and the other 2 are E and G, which we know are what makes the major chord. So we're starting to see something, that has some deeper significance there. That, the major chord comes from something physical, something natural. You keep looking, you see, you divide it by 6, you get another G. This one's a little interesting. You get B flat, which is the minor seventh. So it's not from the major scale, but it still sounds somewhat pleasing. And then we look at the rest of them, we get another octave, major second, and E. So you see that the most prevalent thing, they're octaves, and then we have some fifths and some thirds, right? But there's 2 G's and 2 E's. And so this is tied to why the major chord is so important. It comes from nature. It's not just an arbitrary thing. It's not something that's found by trial and error. There's some fundamental basis for it. Okay, so we're talking about ratios. Just temperament is based on ratios, right? So we have all these ratios. 2 to 1 is an octave, okay? And I want to make sure, when I talk about ratios, you need to talk about the frequency. So multiply by 2, or you know about the wavelength, divide by 2. Whichever, when you're talking about the